鬼岛之音
Ghost Island Media.
A couple years ago, I went on this date that I just can't seem to forget. Before you make assumptions, it's not because I thought I met the love of my life or anything. The reason is because of a particular question he made. In this life-changing conversation, he asked,
So, what was the last book you read?
how was I supposed to explain to a guy who reads history books and biographies for fun that the last time I read anything was on Wattpad?
Hi, welcome to In Training. This is a podcast by interns at Ghost Island Media. Here, we make episodes on anything we want to, and we do it from scratch. From brainstorming to recording to editing. This show, it's different, it's spontaneous, and it's kind of an experiment. There's something for everyone, and here it is.
For those of you who don't know what Wattpad is and don't understand why I was freaking out, basically, Wattpad is a website and app where anyone can publish their own stories. From my experience, it is mainly teenage girls writing stories for other teenage girls to read. It's hard to put into words what the stories on there were like, so I logged into my old account and picked a story from my favorites list. This one is called Babysitting the Bad Boy, written by a user EXXY capital R. The story has 20.3 million views, and this is the blurb. Marnie Jones is an ordinary 11th grader. Her only intentions are to get good grades and save money for college with her babysitting job. Everything is going to plan until she gets a job babysitting the high school bad boy, Zeke Blakely. The two come from completely different social groups, and Marnie automatically hates Zeke and his big ego and cocky attitude. He's a player, he's dangerous, he's reckless. She's safe with an overthinking problem. As the two are seen hanging around school together, attention gets drawn to Marnie, which she hates. But she also catches the eye of a handsome jock too. And why, you ask, does a 17-year-old boy need a babysitter? You'll have to read to find out. Warning, contains vulgar language and mature scenes. Are you intrigued? 'Cause I'm intrigued. Let's read a little, shall we? The following passage is from Chapter 8. The babysitting gig has been going on for a while, and despite hating each other at the start, Marnie and Zeke have started to become friends. Here, he surprises her with a day at the beach.
Zeke walks over to me, about to say something, but stopping and looking down my body. Is Zeke blushing? I feel myself blushing too, and I put my arms over my chest to hide myself. He slowly looks back up my body and meets my eyes.
You're nervous?
He furrows his eyebrows. I shrug.
Why?
I sigh and look away from him, out to the water. A guy I once dated told me I have the body of a 10-year-old. He was nerdy, and you're the opposite, so...
Whatever you're about to say, just don't.
He interrupts.
That guy, he sounds like a real jackass.
I look down at my feet and kick some sand, feeling Zeke step closer to me. He puts his hand on each side of my face, forcing me to look into his eyes.
You're the hottest nerd I ever seen.
He smirks. My heart races in my chest, my knees go weak, and my skin tingles from where he's touching me. This asshole turns me into a mess, and I hate mess. Zeke ruins the intense moment by scooping me up into his arms and throwing me in the water.
For those of you who were Wattpadders back in the day, I can just imagine you right now internally screaming. And I'm sorry, I'm really going to expose this in this podcast today. Okay, now back to that date. After a moment of hesitation, I respond. I can't believe I'm admitting this to you, but I mainly read trashy romance novels.
Oh, alright. You mean like Twilight?
Yeah, like Twilight. I mean, it's close enough to the truth and a million times a more socially acceptable answer. I didn't want to go into the details of what is Wattpad, as you now understand why. Clearly, I'm embarrassed of my past obsession with Wattpad. Even when I was really into it at around 13, 14, it's something that I kept a secret. I never discussed this with anyone, not even my sisters, about this guilty pleasure of mine. my sisters, they're twins who are 2 years younger, and I'm basically the third triplet. We're best friends. So hiding this from them was really unusual. But why is it that something like Twilight is an acceptable form of entertainment, while Babysitting the Bad Boy is not? Look, they both fall into the same coming-of-age, young adult genre. Neither piece claims to be a literary masterpiece, and they both contain some arguably pretty cringy scenes. So why is it that one work gets more respect than the other? Is it maybe because Stephanie Meyers has an actual book deal, while user EXXY does not? Actually, over 1,000 Wattpad stories have been published as books or adapted into film and TV. You might recall having seen The Kissing Booth while scrolling Netflix, but you might not know that The Kissing Booth actually started out as a Wattpad novel. Beth Riegels, who wrote The Kissing Booth, was only 17 when she was offered a 3-book deal by Penguin Random House. Now, she's 25 and has 2 movies with 1 more on the way based on her writing. Yet, despite all of this mainstream recognition, it seems like Wattpad is still considered to be an inferior form of entertainment. How come? Later, I interview my sisters to know their thoughts on this. But first, I'm going to look at a media trend that explains why people feel the need to hide the things that they like. By definition, a guilty pleasure is something you absolutely love. But if anyone were to find out about it, that would be the end of your social life. Nowadays, guilty pleasure is a term that's thrown around so casually. Sleeping in, eating junk food, watching TV, things that we all do are often deemed to be guilty pleasures. Jennifer Weiner is an author and media columnist on gender and culture. She wrote an article for Glamour magazine last year on getting rid of the term guilty pleasure. During lockdown, when most of what we did was sleeping in, eating junk food, watching TV, the concept of a guilty pleasure just left us feeling bad about ourselves. There's a very fine line between what's acceptable and what's not. Take fast food, for example. If you eat a Big Mac combo meal, which is about 1,080 calories, afterwards you might be thinking, oh God, I can't believe how much I just ate. But if you were to eat the same amount of calories at a Michelin star restaurant, you'd be feeling very content. In her article, Weiner claims that the things we often call guilty pleasures are not defined as so because of their inherent negative qualities, but because of their connections to a certain marginalized group. In 2019, DePaul University's online magazine, 14 East, ran a piece by one of their journalism students, Nikki Roberts. Her piece was titled, "Guilty Pleasure is Just Another Way to Shame Women for Their Musical Tastes." Roberts surveyed 120 people about their music listening habits. She found that half of her respondents have a secret, private playlist with what they consider to be guilty pleasure music. Female pop stars like Lady Gaga, Cardi B, and Taylor Swift, and boy bands like One Direction, Jonas Brothers, and 5 Seconds of Summer are artists that were frequently featured in these secret playlists. These are artists who have largely young female fans. Roberts wraps up the article by saying that guilty pleasure is actually a harmful term because it reinforces that the music women enjoy are lesser, disposable forms of pleasure. I know firsthand that young girls are constantly shamed for their music tastes. If you're a fan of Justin Bieber around 2011, you might remember that your Bieber fever was the butt of many jokes at the time. Now, 10 years later, you might consider listening to Baby to be a guilty pleasure. If you look at any list on the internet of the top 10 guilty pleasures, I would bet you that rom-coms, chick flicks, reality TV always make the cut. What I'm trying to get at is that media catered to feminine audiences is usually deemed to be less worthy. With guilty pleasure being a term used so casually nowadays, and its frequent association with feminine media, it makes it easy for discrimination against women to slip under the radar. Returning to the idea of Wattpad is something that I've been conditioned to think is the lowest form of entertainment. The entire platform is basically written by and read by young women, one of the most vulnerable groups in society. My entire life, I've seen young girls be mocked for thinking and behaving the exact same way they were told to. I remember being as young as 8 years old, right when Camp Rock came out, saying that I hated the Jonas Brothers because I thought if I said I liked them, I would be labeled as a boy-crazy fangirl. But at that age, I was already a crazy fangirl of High School Musical. I had PJs, t-shirts, and all 6 Barbie doll versions of the main cast. My parents, older relatives, encouraged this obsession of mine by gifting me with all this High School Musical stuff. But they also constantly teased me for my Zac Efron crush. I have 3 younger sisters. The youngest one is 8 years old, and I wonder and worry if she ever felt the same way I did when I was her age. So I invited the 2 other younger sisters, the twins, to come talk about their guilty pleasures. We all read Wattpad growing up, but it's something we never really talked about. So I really wanted to know how they dealt with their embarrassment over Wattpad, which, after talking to them, they didn't really seem to have. Disclaimer, if you get confused about who's talking when, don't worry. Our parents get us confused all the time. My assumption for writing this podcast was based on, I guess, my own embarrassment. So for you too, it was never like, oh my gosh, I have to hide this from the world. Like no one can ever see my phone. Like my Wattpad app on my phone. And to this day, it was hidden in my productivity folder on page 10. Like
you would, yeah.
So that's being embarrassed, girls.
That's not being embarrassed. That's because, we didn't share that with our parents, reading like romance novels. That's something we didn't share.
I mean,
so
I think I was always kind of like embarrassed for dad finding out of like, oh, you like to read about werewolves?
Yeah. I agree.
I feel like the 2 of you are definitely like less afraid of judgment than me.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because also like we had the 2 of us. We were never scared of being judged because I feel like for you were by yourself. So it was like, I have to fit in. Like if other people don't like this or if they find out I like something that they don't necessarily like, you feel like you would get judged.
I don't know. I think I've been more open with like people discussing Wattpad, and like I haven't been as embarrassed about like, oh, I like Wattpad, because if my older sister reads Wattpad,
it's like
it's cool.
for us.
It's okay. It's okay to do it. So, I've talked to some of my friends about it, and they said they have read it.
I guess it's like reverse for you, because it's like, oh, my little sisters read it, and so it's like more like embarrassing, which is why you wouldn't necessarily share it with your friends.
So say you have to talk about it with, or not have to talk about it, but there's a chance for you to talk about it with someone who doesn't read Wattpad.
Okay, so recently I've, while writing all my college essays, colleges, like, they don't really care. They want to see your personality. So if you're willing to talk about like a guilty pleasure that most people don't talk about, they're open to like, I feel like they're more open to accepting that side of you, because they want to know.
There's no reason to conform.
Yeah,
you do want to be unique in your college essays.
But I'm not sure about, job interviews. I feel like they're
looking for something else.
More professional, you want to be, you want to portray yourself as being smart or
mature,
like
more
mature. So I don't think I would share that side of me.
What about potential friends, like, peers?
You would phrase it in a way where it's like you ask for their opinion first, so you kind of like work to reciprocate their feelings. So you kind of like, especially if you're trying to meet new friends, like you don't want to be the weird girl.
I feel like you make your friends based on similar interests, most of the time, similar background, similar experiences. So if you're trying to make a friend, if like that person,
be your true self.
Yeah, if that person asks what types of books do you read, I would be more open to saying, Wattpad.
Would you, if someone say, hey, back in the day, I loved to read stories about dating an alien. Would you accept your friend? What would you do?
I would judge her. I mean, come on, like dating an alien. But of course, you should feel comfortable sharing that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, let's accept everybody. Let's be nice. But if you like something weird,
we're gonna judge you.
We're gonna be concerned for you.
But you should do what you want to do. Don't you know, you shouldn't.
Because there's always going to be people who
judge you no matter what.
Yeah.
So what if you like, you know?
So you should just embrace your likes. You should embrace your likes. You should embrace your dislikes, and just be who you are.
I mean, I guess even before I, release this episode, talking about my, deepest, darkest secret, like I'm pretty sure there's like thousands of people there who like thought I was weird, judged me or whatever. So yeah, this is the moral of the story from the Chang sisters. People are always going to think you're weird, so just
embrace
be
it.
your weirdest self and like prove them right.
Date an alien.
After talking to my sisters, I realized how much they looked up to me when we were growing up. It makes me so happy to know that they were confident in what they liked because they thought I had embraced it myself. Even when that was not exactly the case. Being the oldest, I didn't have a role model growing up, so I never understood how valuable it can be. I'm not worried about my 8-year-old sister ever feeling bad about who she is and what she likes because I know that being there to support her is enough. If you want to see change in the world, you really have to be the one to take the first step. If you have something you're embarrassed about, whether it's a guilty pleasure or a part of yourself, really, just embrace it.
This episode was hosted, produced, written, and edited by Marina Chang. Production coordination by Trevor Liu. Executive produced by Ghost Island Media. Special thanks to Nicole Chang and Melissa Chang for participating in the interview, and Future Ward for providing the recording room. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, it's Emily Waiwu here. When Marina was interviewing with us for joining the internship program, she had mentioned that she had done videos growing up, just travel videos and daily, everyday videos with her family. So we knew that this would not have been hard for her. She's currently an undergrad media student at UC Berkeley right now. And one of the challenges, I think, going in, other than audio production, was the general tone of the piece. Initially, Marina had a very formal writing style that was very fitting for essays and theses and presentations. But in making a podcast, we really encouraged her to scratch all of the formal talk, all of the formal vocabulary and sentence structures, and tell it like a podcast. And I think the result really came through. We love listening to podcasts because to us, it feels like the host is our best friend, that we're listening to our BFF talking to us. And so I think for any other students out there looking to give their hand on podcasting, that's one of the things to remember is just to be colloquial about it, be comfortable with speaking into the microphone as if you're talking to your best friend. For us, the executive directors, it was really fun to see how this piece developed because Marina built in not just her own narration, but she rebuilt some of these scenes, her date at the restaurant, the Wattpad scenes, and then the chat with her sisters. And we love that she took us on a journey to somewhere totally unexpected. And the ending message of being confident about your taste, about what you love, that really resonated with me. I also had an experience growing up where I was at a school interview and they asked me what book I read. And at the time, I was binging on John Grisham and I couldn't say it. I was very embarrassed. I would read a John Grisham and then watch the movie that it was adapted into. I really loved seeing that transformation. But at the time, I wasn't able to articulate that. I just thought, oh, I'm at a school interview. I'm not supposed to say I'm reading John Grisham. I should have said, I don't know, the Bronte sisters or something, right? So I love the ending message and just getting a peek into Marina's family dynamic with her sisters. That was quite lovely. But also in doing a piece that could have potentially been heavy, it was tricky trying to balance the middle part where it was heavy analysis, how much to keep in, how much to keep out. And we thought the ending balance was quite nice. So yeah, good job, Marina. Good luck back in school, and we'll see you soon.